here with another Mouse Guard architectural model. This time, it's Sprucetuck from Winter 1152, which is the second book in the Mouse Guard series. Unfortunately, I no longer have the model for Sprucetuck. It disintegrated and couldn't hold up its own weight, so the model doesn't exist anymore. But I do have archive photos, and so we're going to be exploring the model through those, talking about what I made it out of and how I used it. First, Sprucetuck is a city that's inside of a spruce tree, and I wanted to have the mice go someplace different in the second book than where we had seen them go in the first. Lockhaven and Barkstone are very much like English castles and English cottage towns. For Sprucetuck, I wanted something to look very different. It's very vertical. It's inside of the hollow of a trunk of a spruce tree. I want it to be kind of like an interior apartment complex. My visual impetus was, let's come up with something that looks like Brian Froud designed the Ewok village. Which is why there's all this elaborate knotwork around the doors and the windows, and that the balconies would be these concentric rings, kind of like we see in Return of the Jedi that the Ewoks use around their huts. Now, to make the model, I started by drawing what each one of those floors would be. Actually, let me back up. I started by trying to draw just an establishing shot and found, just like most artists know, drawing concentric rings in perspective is just a pain in the butt. It's tedious. And I thought, if I have a model, I can do this and have reference from multiple angles and not have to keep doing that over and over every time I do a different angle or a different kind of shot. So I started by drawing just one floor on a sheet of Bristol board. Just what the doors would look like, the arrangement of the doors, the arrangement of the windows, the elaborate knotwork, and I did that over and over. And then I glued on a curved piece of just corrugated cardboard to be like the balcony. And I stacked all of these and glued them together. I used rubber cement. I later went in and tried to use a little bit of hot melt glue to get it some more rigidity. And overall, this thing stood about 2 feet tall. It had about 6 floors, and I was able to use it for reference. I was able to look at just certain parts of it, but I could also lay it out on the table and do some Photoshop trickery by moving my camera and getting it to extend itself so that the model went on and on further than I had actually built it, or to go all the way around, because I'd only done a semicircle, not the entire full radius. And while that model was helpful, I did have to draw in some details as I went on the final pages, things like details of the doors and details on the windows and differences between different signs and things like that. But most importantly was how the mice would get from one floor to another. I did build in a few ladders in the model and thought about putting in some ramps, but it's the counterweighted elevators that really made the impact, and those were just added in as I drew. Well, as I said, this thing stood about 2 feet tall and was put together with materials that just could not stand the test of time, couldn't even stand up against its own weight. And so the model disintegrated, and I no longer have it. That's not entirely true. Because as it was falling apart, I didn't like the idea of getting rid of that original source material. Even though the drawings aren't accurate to what is in the final drawings for the comic, I didn't want to get rid of them. So I actually kept them. I pulled off the concentric rings, the arcs that would form the balconies, and I kept every floor that I had hand drawn. You can still see the glue marks, and you can see where I had folded edges to be able to glue on the next balcony section. But I had all of these, and I had them stored in an envelope in my desk. I recently uncovered them, which is why I decided to do this video. And I think I have plans to rebuild Sprucetuck. Not that that's a clue for anything coming up story-wise or anything like that. Just, I think for archive purposes, it makes sense to have a new version of Sprucetuck. Except, it really should be a new version, because those drawings that I hand drew don't really represent what's drawn in the comic. And I know that I could do better. But because this is about archiving, first and foremost, what I did was I scanned all of these hand-drawn pieces, which, like I said, are huge. And I printed them out at a smaller size, so that if I made a model, it wouldn't be 24 inches tall, but about this big. This is a model that I built inside of a poster mailing tube. The balcony ridges are chipboard, which is what the back of Bristol pads and sketch pads are made out of. And the floors themselves, the walls with the doors, are just the scanned in versions of my original drawings. So for archive purposes, for archive purposes, I shouldn't drop this. For archive purposes, I have this version. Now, at some point, I do plan on remaking Sprucetuck even better than this. I know that I can do a better job at drawing the doors, drawing the windows, coming up with more differences, and including some of the ramps that I had in an original concept sketch that didn't make it into the final piece. I'd also like to have a little elevator in a newer version. I do plan on making it slightly bigger than this, but nowhere near as big as the 2-foot tall version. So splitting the difference, I think first and foremost what I'll be using as a basis is a cardboard mailing tube, because that'll have enough rigidity that it can stand up on its own. The structure is built in, and then everything else is just glued on window dressing. So that is the model that I made, destroyed, archived, and rebuilt, and will rebuild again. I hope to do a video about the rebuilding of the, I guess it would be 3.0 version of Sprucetuck, and when I do, you can probably watch it here on YouTube on my channel. Go ahead and click subscribe. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching.